Hey everybody, Sayre at Nova Motorcycles again. This week we're looking at a Triumph again. This is a 1973 TR7 Tiger. Now, for the Triumph folks out there, you know the difference between a Tiger and a Bonneville. But for those who don't, the Tiger was a single car version, sort of the touring version, versus the Bonneville, which was supposed to be the sports bike version. By the time we get to the 70s, the Bonneville basically looks identical to this. It's basically a little cruiser kind of thing, but still was marketed as the 750 was the T140, and the Tiger was the 750 Tiger was the TR7. So 73 was the first year of the 750, also the first year of the 5-speed gearbox. So Triumph was moving forward with the evolution of stuff. Also, first year disc brake. That's actually not to be missed. Trying to keep up again. They come out with this oil and frame. Which was their big answer to the Japanese onslaught of new motorcycles that were kicking their butts. They did not change the motor much other than going to 750, adding another gear to the gearbox, and basically keeping it the same. But gave us a new frame, gave us disc brakes to keep up, and tried to sell it. They did okay. This was the beginning of the end for Triumph, though. Still making great bikes. A lot of them had quality control issues. And if you remember from our 500cc Triumph, also a 73 from a few weeks back, 73 was when they had some labor issues because the ownership of the company was changing. Everybody was upset. The industry was falling apart. They weren't doing enough to keep up with the Japanese. It's an old story. We'll keep telling it. But anyway, this came to us, this bike, purchased by the customer, got it running, rode it around for a while. Clearly, it's been stored outside for a bit. It's seen some, it's showing its age, but it's all there. It's a pretty decent bike. Main complaint was that it's smoking a bit, and really that's making a lot of noise. So I was able to start it, listen to the noise. It didn't sound like engine knock, big end knock, anything super catastrophic. It did sound like a worn motor. So what we did is we tore down the top end, and when we get into the top end, we come across these. Now, if you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, you would have seen these pistons just a few days ago. This carbon here is what we call blow-by. Blow-by is the gases that are supposed to stay above the rings here in the combustion chamber, making their way past. That can happen because the pistons are worn. That can happen because the bore itself is worn. That can happen because the rings are worn, and it can happen because all of those things are happening. Typically, on an old engine, all those things are happening. And so what we do is we tear it down, we find out what's going on visually, and then we break out the tools. So we've measured these. These pistons are definitely worn beyond what they should be. The rings are worn beyond what they should be. We took off one of the rings and threw it in the bore to measure it. And then we take a micrometer to the bore and measure that. The bores are actually right on the line, but had some damage from storage, some water damage that erodes the cylinder. And that's going to cause a leakage point, a point that doesn't seal. And so what we do at that point, we hone out the cylinder and we get that point, that blemish gone. And then once the blemish is gone, we measure it again. Now, what happened with this? We bored it out, we honed it out to the point of that blemish being gone. The cylinder is really pushing its limits as far as it being useful. So what we're going to do is overbore this and do that. In the meantime, we also go through the cylinder head, check the valve guides, check the valves, all that stuff. This thing needs valve guides as well. But it should be good to go at that. Now, another thing about Triumphs, another reason why they kind of fell out of favor as the Japanese really took over and it brought much more advanced stuff, things like oil filters and stuff to the market, is that they have what's called a sludge trap in the crankshaft. So even a motor that's otherwise great, it's often a really good idea to tear it all the way down to the crankshaft because that's where all the goo gets collected up. So you have to completely, pull the motor out, split the cases, pull the crank apart, and then the oil runs through, and there's the channel, the little chamber that collects really the solids that get stuck in the oil through centrifugal force. If that doesn't get cleaned, your oil gets blocked and you seize your motor. So it's sort of one of those things where it may be fine. This motor actually, never been apart before. First, still the standard pistons, probably can get away without doing it. But you never know. And if you don't have service history, you buy it from someone who doesn't have service history, it may be a good idea just to bite the bullet and go in there. So we may be taking this down. We're going to have a conversation with the owner and say, how far you want to go. What kind of a risk you want to take on this old thing. And we'll see. But either way, it'll be another Triumph rebuild. They're always fun to do. They're really simple. They have their own flaws and then complaints about what they were doing at the time. And the 70s, they were really losing out to the Japanese, but they still maintained really interesting machines. And the 5-speed gave it a lot of new life. And sort of like a Norton Commando, they found ways to keep up with make their old designs interesting and at least keep up, if not win things anymore. So stay tuned for this, and keep watching. We'll have some other stuff coming down the pike. And as usual, please like and subscribe. Keep watching.